Hello everyone. Today, I'm going over a budget commander deck that I've brewed around Gilgamesh, Master at Arms. As usual, I've designed this deck to list for less than $45 at the time of recording, using prices listed by Scryfall, including our basic lands at 10 cents each, but as a list price, this won't include costs such as shipping. Anyway, Gilgamesh, Master at Arms, is a 6/6 legendary human samurai for 4 and 2 red that I will refer to as Greg for the rest of the video. And whenever Greg enters the battlefield or attacks, you look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you may put any number of equipment cards from among those cards onto the battlefield, putting the rest onto the bottom of your library in a random order. And when one or more equipment cards are put onto the battlefield this way, you may attach one of them to a samurai you control, which is very much an effect made for a Voltron build. So, this deck is primarily going to focus on having a ton of ramp and equipment spells, with a much higher amount of ramp than your average commander deck, aiming to get Greg out as early as turn 4, maybe even turn 3 on a very rare occasion, and to have Greg's effect as our main way of digging through our deck to access our equipment spells. And given Mono Red's lack of a good card advantage, Greg will also be our primary source of accessing additional cards. Also notably, equipment creatures and equipment with effects like Job Select and Living Weapon can get pulled by Greg, so there is another way for us to get creatures onto the battlefield. The ramp will also come in handy for attaching additional equipment to Greg outside of his effect, as you will likely have a bunch of those cards sitting on the field before long, and it could also help with Greg getting some tempo if Greg gets dealt with a few times. Also ideally we'll get Haste onto Greg the turn he gets out, so we can immediately put the pressure on and to get 2 Greg triggers in one turn. And as Voltron, we'll be looking to get a bunch of different keywords onto Greg, with some notable ones that we're looking for being Double Strike and Trample. But ultimately, this looks to do typical Voltron things, building one massive, preferably evasive creature that can hopefully one-shot our opponents through commander damage before long, that looks to use our commander's ability to access the spells to buff it to that level. And as a side thing, this deck can not infrequently kill off an opponent by like turn 5 or 6 if left unchecked, so keep that in mind when you're doing your Rule 0 conversations. But regardless, let's get into the 99 of this deck, starting with our ramp. I'll start with our 1-drops with Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can sack to tutor a basic land onto the battlefield tapped, Freya Crescent, which produces a red mana to spend on equipment spells or activating an equip ability, and Soul Ring, which might actually be one of the first times I've included this in one of my budget brews on this channel. Then Arcane Signet and Fire Diamond will tap for red mana, though the latter enters battlefield tapped, and Felwar Stone could potentially tap for red, depending on what our opponents have for lands. Mind Stone, Prismatic Lens, and Fractured Power Stone will tap for generic, and the Iron Crag also taps for generic, but when a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can transform it into a legendary equipment artifact called Everflame, Hero's Legacy, with an equip cost of 3, and it gives its equipped creature +3/+3, though it does cease to be a mana rock, and the effect lasts indefinitely. Commander Sphere, Sonic Screwdriver, and Coalition Relic can be tapped for red mana, though Sonic Screwdriver could also be used to make a creature unblockable for the turn, and Coalition Relic can help you effectively store mana for a turn, tapping it to put a charge counter on it, and then you remove all charge counters from it at the start of your pre-combat main phase, adding 1 mana of any color for each charge counter removed that way. Warren Power Stone enters tapped, but taps for 2 generic mana for 3. And finally, Thran Dynamo is a 4-drop artifact that taps for 3 generic. Now before digging into the bulk of our equipment, I would like to go over our sources of haste. Now there's 2 non-equipment sources of haste in this deck, with Rising of the Day being an enchantment that gives your creatures haste and your legendary creatures +1 power, and Firion, Wild Rose Warrior, is a creature that gives your equipped creatures haste, while also having you make token copies of equipments that enter the battlefield under your control, with those token copies costing 2 less to equip, but you sack them at the beginning of the next upkeep. Then moving on to our equipment sources, there's Boots of Speed, giving +1 power and haste, Rabbit Battery, giving its equipped creature +1/+1 in haste, Swiftfoot Boots to get haste and hexproof, Hero's Heirloom giving +2/+1, and if the equipped creature is legendary, trample and haste, Sword of Vengeance giving +2 power, First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and haste, and Samurai's Katana with Job Select, but giving its equipped creature +2/+2, trample, haste, and it makes it a samurai in addition to its other types. But with our haste sources out of the way, let's start going over the bulk of our equipment spells. Starting with those here primarily to increase Greg's power, we have Colossus Hammer, giving +10/+10, but the creature also loses flying. Nettlecyst with Living Weapon, but giving its equipped creature +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Blackblade Reforged, giving +1/+1 power for each land you control. Thran Power Suit, giving +1/+1 for each aura and equipment attached to the equipped creature, along with Ward 2. Ogrehead Helm is an equipment creature that gives its equipped creature +2/+2, and can be sacked when it deals combat damage to discard your hand to draw 3. Warrior Sword with Job Select and giving +3/+2 and the warrior creature type. and Red Mage's Rapier with Job Select and giving its equipped creature +2 power whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and this is also probably one of, if not the first card that I'd sub out if upgrading personally. Champion's Helm gives +2/+2, and if its equipped creature is legendary, it gets hexproof. And Two-Handed Axe doubles its equipped creature's power until the end of the turn when it attacks, but you may wish to use its adventure, Sweeping Cleave, if you happen to get this in your hand instead of through Greg. Then moving towards Double Strike. Fire Shrieker simply gives its equipped creature Double Strike, Leyline Axe gives +1/+1, Double Strike, and Trample, and if it's in your opening hand, you can start the game with it on the battlefield. The Spear of Leonidas has you choose one of 3 options when its equipped creature attacks, giving it Double Strike for the turn, making Phobos, a legendary 3/2 red horse creature token, or discarding 2 cards and drawing 2. Brass Knuckles makes a copy of itself when you cast it, so not if Greg grabs it from the top of your library, but gives its equipped creature Double Strike if it has 2 or more equipment on it, and Lizard Blades is an equipment creature that gives its equipped creature Double Strike. Then Loxodon Warhammer gives +3 power, lifelink, and trample, Team Pennant giving +1/+1 vigilance and trample, Onaginata for +3 power and trample, Ramosian Greatsword giving +3/+1 and trample, Vorik Battlehorns giving trample and making it so the equipped creature can only be blocked by at most 1 creature, and Bronzeplate Boar is an equipment creature that gives its equipped creature +3/+2 and trample. Now since it pairs well with trample, we have Gorgon's Head, Gorgon's Flail, and Basilisk Collar, each giving Death Touch, with the Flail also giving +1/+1 and the Collar giving lifelink. Prowler's Helm makes it so the equipped creature can only be blocked by walls, and Trailblazer's Boots gives its equipped creature non-basic Landwalk, which for many decks could basically say unblockable. And Fiend Lash and Shortbow give their equipped creatures reach, with the former also giving +2 power, and when that creature is dealt damage, it deals damage equal to its power to a target player or planeswalker, and the latter gives +1/+1 in vigilance. Now this might be a very aggro deck, but we'll still want to use some interaction. So I'll start with Lightning Bolt and Lightning Strike, which deal 3 damage to any target, and Judgment Bolt, which deals 5 damage to a target creature, and X damage to that creature's controller, with X being the number of equipment you control. Fire of Orthanc has you destroy a target artifact or land, and then creatures without flying can't block that turn. Smash to Dust destroys an artifact, destroys a creature with Defender, or it deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Cast into Fire exiles an artifact, or deals 1 damage each to up to 2 target creatures. And Abrade deals 3 damage to a target creature, or destroys a target artifact. Chaos Warp shuffles a target permanent into its owner's library, and then the owner of that permanent reveals the top card of their library, which they put onto the battlefield if it's a permanent that's revealed. Shunt and Bolt Bend let you change the target of a target spell with a single target, with Bolt Bend also working on an ability. And Return the Favor costs 2, and then has Spree, letting you pay 1 to get more additional effects, though only once for each effect. With one effect letting you copy an instant, sorcery, activated ability, or triggered ability, and then you choose new targets for that copy, and the other having you change the target of a target spell or ability with a single target. And finally, there's Chain Reaction, which deals X damage to each creature, with X being the number of creatures on the battlefield. But now that we've gone through all the spells in this deck, let's go over our land base. Starting with Myriad Landscape, which we can sack to tutor 2 basic mountains onto the battlefield tapped. Bonder's Enclave, which can be used to draw a card if we control a creature with power 4 or greater. Buried Ruin can let us return a target artifact from our graveyard to our hand. And Rogue's Passage can be used to make Greg unblockable for the turn. But aside from those, we'll fill the rest of this deck with 33 basic mountains. And now that we've gone through all the cards in this deck, let's take a look at that price. And as you can see here, this deck is currently listing for just a smidge under $45, which does include our basics at 10 cents each, but as this is a list price, it doesn't include things like taxes and shipping. And before closing out this video, there's actually a bunch of cards I'd like to suggest if you're looking to upgrade this deck further with a larger budget. Starting with Genji Glove, which quite literally has Greg on it, but it gives Double Strike and an extra combat phase. And there's Hexplate Wallbreaker, giving an additional body on the field, additional power and toughness, and an extra combat phase. Blade of Selves with Miri can actually be quite solid in this deck, as while the copies of Greg may die immediately due to the legend rule, due to Greg's ETB effect, you'd actually get to search your library 3 times and equip up to 3 equipment every time Greg attacks. Once for the real Greg attack trigger, and 2 for the fake Greg ETB triggers. Then there's Excalibur, Sword of Eden for a huge power boost, along with Vigilance. Atir and Priwin can give an absurd amount of power and toughness if you still have your life total reasonably intact. Batterskull is a solid living weapon card, giving +4/+4, Vigilance, and lifelink. Komainu Battle Armor as an equipment creature that gives menace and +2/+2 power, and if you deal combat damage to a player with it or its equipped creature, you get to goad each creature that player controls, making our life total that little bit safer. Lava Spur Boots gives you more access to haste and a little bit of flimsy protection for Greg. Brass Squire can help us equip all the excess equipment you had lying around. Silent Arbiter can make it harder for opponents to take us out. War Room can give us some more access to draw on a land. And finally, Untimely Malfunction, mostly for the spell redirection or artifact destruction. But I should close out this video, so if you'd like to build, adapt, upgrade, or otherwise play with this deck, the link, as always, is in the description down below. If you like the video, consider dropping it a like, and maybe drop a sub if you'd like more brews in your feeds. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.